and you're a powerhouse lady on a mission, right? You're a really powerful lady. And for someone that is so powerful, because I know a lot of the listeners that tune into this are really growth driven people, and you're one of the most powerful forces that I've met,
Oh,
and you
bless.
still got to that point. So I would really be honored if you could share that vulnerability on how you as someone who is so strong got to that point in your
Mm.
life.
Thank you. What a lovely introduction. I'm so excited to be your first guest on this new show. And so, for the listeners and for a refresh for us as well, you know what? My life before I kind of had this severe adversity, which has been probably the biggest blessing that could have happened to me now, reflecting back on that. But for years, Ryan, you know, for over a decade, I was operating at a pretty fast pace in the corporate world.
Mm,
I started off in medical sales. So I was in surgical theatres every day. And then I got promoted to a senior role. And then I became a general manager when I stepped out of that healthcare industry. But my days were 12, 13-hour days. I would
mm,
relax in the afternoon and evening times with kind of like the Hendrix gin on ice in my hand, you know, those kinds of like quick, really unhealthy hits, what I perceived was
mm,
stress releasing. Then the next day,
yeah.
I was an athlete. I'd been an athlete since I was young. So I was used to training my body super hard. Now,
Mm,
not knowing the impact of like triathlon training and, you know, big long runs and that cortisol inducing, I thought that I was doing the best thing for myself. So I'd get up in the morning and I'd hit the pavement, you know, first thing in the morning, straight out the front door, 5 a.m., huge run, train, get get home, you know, have a shower, and then I'd get the triple shot coffee. So it was
mm,
just this
mm,
constant like on. Then I'd do the big long days. And my philosophy back then, when I used to live in Sydney and had that role, was work hard, party hard. So I used to party hard as well.
mm.
And it was, you know, work out hard. So everything was at this hard level. I had such high expectations on
And by
myself.
society standards, you were doing it like you were doing well at what we are taught to believe is a full life at that point as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You know, that's what a successful life looks like.
yeah,
But it doesn't, right? Because it comes at the cost.
yeah. Well, this is
So,
why I want to bring it up, because a
yeah.
lot of people think that this is the crux, and people that haven't yet got to that turning point of
Mm.
pain. And I always say the best lessons come with blood.
Mm.
You know that that hasn't happened for a lot of people, and to try to convince them, and this is one thing I want to explore in this convo today, is how you've created a sustainable lifestyle, which I'm not going to ask a question for, but your lifestyle is filled with so much space now,
Mm.
beautiful space for you and your family and your health and nourishing yourself. And you're very productive. You're growing a
Mm.
mission. You're on a mission, and you're kicking ass. But it's not in the same way. And
Yeah.
so, like, yeah, I just want to intercept there, and because I'd love for you to weave in the any false truths that you believed from back then that would
Mm.
lead you. Because I know one of your four pillars now is productivity. So you
Mm.
believe in getting shit done.
Absolutely.
How, like, to anyone that's listening that kind of thinks, well, creating more space is actually going to allow me to get less done as well.
Mhm. And how untrue that is. So we will, and I'll absolutely touch on that. So for people to kind of understand where that pivot happened for me in that sort of option B of new life, was that when I was operating at this pace, it took me 5 years to fall pregnant. I really wanted to have a baby. And then in 2015 we were so blessed, we fell pregnant. I was the most excited, just excited person cruising around Sydney. And then an ironic thing really happened to someone who's a really like a career drivenist, an optimistic person, someone who's really happy in life. And I
Mm,
got slammed really hard with severe postnatal depression, like gut wrenching postnatal depression, to the point that it was so clinical, but I had no idea about it, right? I had no idea about
mm,
mental health. I had no idea about postnatal depression. I didn't even know what that was, to be honest, when I had the baby. No idea. And so
mm,
day 3, the chemical imbalance when the milk came in, the genetic predisposition from one of my parents that I didn't know about because they were hiding behind a mask. Day 3, the chemicals just went absolutely berserk, and I was having premonitions that day of jumping off the balcony at this hotel because I'd gone to a private hospital to have the baby. Then they transferred me to the hotel because we were getting it as a new mum. So
mm.
I was having this lovely sort of lifestyle down at this private hotel, but all these really dark feelings and thoughts were coming up and I was suppressing it.
Wow.
wow, that is full on. Don't tell
Mm,
anyone that. That is crazy, right? Don't say
mm,
that to anybody. They'll take the baby from you. Let's just pretend everything's okay. And the
mm.
insomnia started that day, like that night, could not sleep. And this went on, Ryan, for like, 6 weeks. Every day was just getting worse. I was crying more. I couldn't get the handle on breastfeeding. I had worse and worse insomnia. And I thought, you can't complain. You've been waiting 5 years for this baby. Like, this is everything that you've wanted.
Be
Do not
grateful.
be grateful. Some people can't have babies. You should be so grateful that you've got a baby and a healthy one.
Yeah.
And the insomnia anxiety just got so bad that then it kind of switched into really bad depression. And I remember at 6 weeks, my doctor, it was a locum at the time, my actual GP was away, and she said, you need to just get some sleep. And I'm like, I'll do anything to get sleep. And she said, how about I give you some sleeping pills? I'm like, great. Okay. So
Mm,
got on the sleeping pills. They are so addictive.
mm,
And when you have one little block of sleep for 5 hours, I'm like, brilliant. I feel like a different woman. I'll take another one the next night. She didn't
mm,
tell me that they get really addictive after 3 days. So then
mm.
I start this full blown addiction to benzos. Now, the thing with benzodiazepines is that you're required to have more as the time goes along. So it has this compounding effect, and then you get
Yeah.
less sleep, right? So
Yeah.
9 weeks in, after the birth of Clara, I was sleeping like 1 hour, 1 or 2 hours, and I was taking 3 or 4 benzos a night. So you can
Wow.
imagine the impact of that was having on my mental health.
Yeah.
Now, that week, I was going to escape to Scotland to my best mate's wedding and be the bridesmaid. I was still pretending to everyone I was okay, still looking on the outside. I had everything going on, but on the inside, all day, if I saw myself in the mirror, I'll just burst into tears and just go, just hold on, Chels. Just, you can get through this. You can snap out of it. And I just couldn't. And then when I was meant to be in Scotland, I remember this day I was driving to the airport. I had such bad suicidal thoughts popping up in my mind all the time. And I thought, if I can just get to Scotland and away from my situation here, I could recover, right? Maybe I can get better without having a newborn around. And so on the way to the airport, I suffered this huge panic attack. And it was so severe that I don't know if anyone's experienced a panic attack listening, but they're horrendous. It feels like you're having a heart attack. I couldn't see, pulled the car over, and that was the moment that I'd lost all hope. And I just thought, you know what? I can't even get to Scotland. I'm a burden as a mum. I'm not a good friend. I can't snap out of this, whatever this is. The only way to get out of this is to end my life. Now, when you're a high functioning type A person, you're very action orientated, right? So it's very scary for people who are suicidal to be in this headspace. So I was just on Google, jumping on Google, going, okay, how can I do it? What's the best way to do it? The most efficient way? Before I do that, I'll go home and I'll write a letter to my daughter and to Jay. And at this stage, I'd convinced myself in my mind that Jay was better off without me. Clara, my daughter, was better off without a mother like me because I was hopeless. This is what I was telling myself. Jay will get married to someone else more amazing. They'll thank me. They're going to be so grateful that I do this for them. Like, this is the kind of like bizarre, untrue thinking patterns suicidal patients have, right? So I get home to write the letter, and my husband was there, and he's like, hey, babe, what is going on with you? You're meant to be at the airport. Are you doing okay? Are you doing okay? And I just burst into tears, Ryan. And that was the first moment I could actually be honest with him and just go, darling, I'm just not coping. I just cannot get it as a new mum. I have got suicidal thoughts. I really honestly think that life is better off without me not here. I know you probably find this bizarre to hear, but you're going to be really grateful when I take my life today. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he
Yeah.
just broke, right? Like, he's crying, I'm crying. And
Wow.
I'm just like, darling, we need to get you professional help, like, straight away. We need to get you into hospital. Like, this is not normal. And I was so blessed, Ryan, that he was home that day. And that one question honestly saved my life. Hey, are you doing okay? Like, honestly, are you doing okay today? That genuine question. And that kind of unfolds then from that story of getting into hospital, being admitted, getting myself back on track, and I was very blessed that
How many years ago was this?
that was 5 years ago. Like, well, yeah,
Wow.
years ago. So it's just been this journey, right, of being able to, and I was lucky that I had someone that loved me that could take action and
Yeah.
get me into the hospital. And then in that unit, I met a great psychiatrist who kind of taught me everything about meditation, mindfulness, gut health,
Yeah.
fasting. And after the like 5 weeks of recovering, you know, I had to be medicated, and honestly, the medication saved my life. But after the
Mm.
5 weeks, my psychiatrist said to me, you know, you would be such a beautiful psychologist. And I thought, rightio. Okay. Maybe, maybe
Type
this is
A
my life.
personality.
Yeah, right. I'm like, yeah, right. I'll go back to uni. But before I did that, she prescribed to me loving kindness, compassion, meditation when I left the hospital. She was just such an amazing person. And I spent some time at the Nantin Temple. And I remember I was there doing this loving kindness, compassion meditation, because when you go through postnatal depression, you have a lot of shame and guilt about not getting it.
Yeah.
And I was with the monks one day and doing this loving kindness towards myself first and then across the globe. And one of the monks said to me, "Hey, Charles, do you know that sometimes we have to, you know, break or crack for the light to come out and to get to your true calling?" And I thought, wow, that is so powerful.
Mm.
You're right. Imagine if I could help people never go through what I went through.
Mm.
So I was so inspired then. I was really empowered. I had this flame inside my belly to think, if I now help one person in this life, that they don't take their life, then that is such a beautiful
So,
thing. You
yeah.
know, uh,
I really want to just give you some massive kudos, because I didn't know the, you know, that place that you were at in your life before. I didn't know you then, but having seen who you are now, that's just like your normal day-to-day life. It's full of wellness and empowerment and
yeah,
love. And, you know, I can see you, it's so obvious to see how much you love your little one. Is it
mm,
Clara?
Clara, she's
Clara.
an
And your
angel.
family, and you know, you legitimately are just the embodiment of what it is that you teach, and it's just incredible. And you mentioned, like, I was so lucky to that day to have my husband's support, and I was so lucky to have this psychologist. But up until that point, you hadn't done anything wrong. Like,
Mm,
you just happened to go full on based on what your environment told you was right. It wasn't
mhm,
like there was any bad intent. It was the opposite. You're like, I'm trying to get the most out of my life. And I
mhm,
can relate to this a lot as well, because I tried so hard to get myself to the point where I burnt myself out. It wasn't
yeah,
like it was
yeah,
easy to get there. It was like, it was really hard to do the thing that was hard, that was bad for me from a health perspective. I
yeah,
worked so hard to burn myself out. I was so courageous to get myself to that point of success.
yeah,
Um, and I can just, I really can feel empathy for that. And then off the back end, like being that kind of high achiever, then kind of blaming myself for getting to that point. And it's like, none of it was your fault. And
mhm,
then you were able to have the open-mindedness, like the universe gifted you some karma, which you'd earned, you know,
mm,
with that psychologist, and karma that you earned with your partner that day, because, you know, you deserved to have
yeah.
that turning point.
Thank you, Ryan. What a blessing that was. And I just
Yeah.
think my psychiatrist was so, and this is a really beautiful question that answers something that you brought up at the start of the conversation, was around, you know, how we define success. And my psychiatrist in the hospital said to me, instead of thinking about what you want to have, let's start journaling down how you want to feel. And let's define
Yes.
success that way. She's like, tell me, how do you want to feel moving forward? And I said to her, I want to feel calm. I want to feel
Yeah.
at peace. I want to feel happiness.
Yeah.
She said, one of the things was, I think you should move out of Sydney. That was one of her guidances, because a lot of her anxiety patients actually leave the city, because the cities are just so, everything's just, you know, in a rush and hard. And it just
Yeah.
really does wind us up as anxious people.
Yes.
And she said, have you ever thought about moving down south? And I thought, that's exactly where I wanted to be living for the last sort of decade, because my in-laws are down in Gerringong Way, and I thought,
Mm,
that's it. I need a pace of life that's not so stimulated all the time.
yeah. And that was the obvious choice for your new definition of success, but it was the non-obvious choice for your old definition of
Correct.
success.
Correct.
Yeah.
It was so brilliant, because now financially I'm more financially well off than I ever have been before. But it's more financially well off in terms of my bucket is so full, and that financial wealth honestly just gets distributed straight back out there to our charities that we support for mental health. And then it kind of just flows back in, we just flow it back out. And it's
Yeah.
not, I'm no longer attached to the house or a car or shoes or that ridiculous stuff that we get hardwired to.